Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalam ala ashraf al-anbiya'i wal-mursaleen. Sayyidina wa Mawlana Abul Qasim al-Mustafa Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala wa ahla bayti at-tayyibin at-tahirin wa la'natullah ala a'dahim ila qiyam yawmiddin. We're starting a new series, inshallah. Most Saturdays we'll continue this unless there's a specific event happening on a new topic, and that topic is ethics in the Holy Quran. Many of us, we learn about the wajibat, the muharramat, things that are obligatory, things that are haram. But unfortunately, and I'm not saying that I have reached this, but unfortunately we have missed out on that ethical component in Islam and some of the attributes that a believer should have, or a Shia follower of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam should have. So we need to be able to look at problems from their source, and that is what ethics does. Islamic ethics looks at the problems. If somebody, for example, is jealous, it goes and examines what is the source of jealousy, what is the source of, for example, anger. And it gives us the answers for us to become better ethical people. I think you were to agree with me that ethical behavior is what intrigues people, is what causes them to come in and be attracted to Islam. In the Quran it says about the Prophet of Islam, if the Prophet was harsh in speech or heart, that people would have run away from Islam. So we see one of the key components of success of our Prophet was his ethics, and that he has been brought down for us to make complete, you can say, our ethics. So what is ethics, and what is Islamic ethics, and how can we learn from the Holy Quran, which is not only a book that gives us knowledge, it also at the same time refines us and should make us better people. And I think that truly if we look at today's society, that even though we have that potential of being able to be of the best, yet Muslims today, not all, but Muslims today, are still very far from where we should be in terms of practice. Because that most important thing at the end is practice. And that practice is what makes us, inshallah, takes us towards perfection. So when you look at today, the first, conversation we're going to have is that a person has to study vices and virtues to see and examine themselves, to see what vices they have, what virtues they have. And these negative, sifat, they're trying to eliminate in themselves. They're trying to examine and to see, do I have a spiritual sickness? Do I have an ethical sickness in me? Is there something that I'm doing wrong, a source? For example, I might be too cheap. And whenever I go home to my family members, and this is the parts of the speech that the sisters like a lot, I'm too cheap, I don't spend on the house, I don't let them go shopping, for example, I cancel my credit card for them. And, or I might be in the opposite, I don't know how to manage the way I spend. And I'm foolish when it comes to my spending. So we have to examine ourselves and to see, how am I? What kind of person am I? Am I courageous? Am I generous? Am I, for example, a person that gets angry very easily? Am I a person that is not caring for people? Am I selfish? So these are very important topics. But the most important thing that we can first talk about is in Islamic ethics, is that we want to be able to look at the source of problems, the root of problems. There's a hadith from Imam Hadi alayhi salam, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad wa ajal farajahum, that Imam Hadi alayhi salam mentions that sometimes if we think of khair and good being how good it is when someone does good, there's something else better than this good. Or for example, when we talk about jameel and beauty or good actions, there's something more important than good actions. Imam alayhi salam mentioned in hadith, khayrun min al-khayr fa'ilu. Better than good itself is the person that does good, the source of goodness. So one person, for example, there's a beautiful act of, for defending the oppressed. It's a good action. It's beautiful. Good job. You saved someone. But better than that action, Imam Hadi alayhi salam says, is that person that performs that action. That person is better than the action itself. وَأَجْمَلُ مِنَ الْجَمِيلِ قَائِلُ. So sometimes maybe somebody here you've heard of, beautiful speech, has said something very beautiful to you. But better than that speech is that person that speaks beautifully, speaks nicely to you. وَأَرْجَعْ مِنَ الْعِلْمِ حَامِلُ. Even knowledge, that we have so many narrations how important knowledge is, but more important than knowledge itself is the knowledgeable, the one that has acquired that knowledge. So here Ayatollah Maikarim Shirazi mentions and says, look, this hadith is talking about the sources of good. And if you ever want to, rectify people, change people, you have to look at the sources, because good action, beautiful words, knowledge comes from people that have attained these things. And then the evil side, 3 characteristics that were good and 2 characteristics that are bad. وَشَرٌ مِنَ الشَّرِّ جَالِبُ وَأَحْوَلُ مِنَ الْحَوْلِ رَاكِبُ. And the person who is even worse, what is even worse than wickedness, is the person that commits evil. That killing itself is bad. We see today, for example, now first we talked about one equivalent of one nuclear bomb being dropped in Gaza, for example, 12,000 megatons or whatever, 12,000 tons, for example. Then we talk about the second one, because so many bombs have been dropped since, and now they talk about it's equivalent to 2 small nuclear weapons dropped in a small place. So worse than that action of oppression is that person who does that oppression, or those people that promote that oppression or justify that oppression. It is worse than the action itself. وَأَحْوَلُ مِنَ الْحَوْلِ رَاكِبُ is the person that, the obstruction, worse than the obstruction is that person that does that obstruction itself. So when you look at ethics, and we see that actually when you talk about the source of ethics, and you talk about khair, we talk about jameel, for example, we talk about these good actions, truly our ulama had these. Unfortunately, you have to hear this from me, a person whose ethics is very low. I have to talk to you who your ethics is better. But our scholars that have written books on ethics, some of them like, Jami' al-Sa'adat, Mullah Naraqi, was he a person, do you think, some of these people that wrote these great books, and you can, the compilation or Collector Felicities is the book that has been translated in English. If you would like to look at it, you can look at Mullah Naraqi's book in English, alislam.org has it, Collector Felicities. So did our ulama and scholars that talked about ethics, did they have these traits? Were they truly ethical people? So actually, once they say Mullah Naraqi, big scholar that is coming to Najaf, and I don't know how much some of the culture that usually when someone comes to a new city, it's usually the responsibility of the other scholars to come to visit him because he's a guest. They come to see him. People came, they say, Mullah Naraqi, number 1 of, for example, Iran, has come to Najaf. Everyone basically comes to visit him except for one person, number 1 of Najaf, Sayyid Mahdi Bahrul Ulum. He doesn't come to see him. So people are wondering, wow, everyone came to see him, but how comes this great scholar, Sayyid Mahdi Bahrul Ulum? And as much as we can say about Sayyid Mahdi Bahrul Ulum, there's not time for it. We could spend one night talking about how much virtue this great marja, mujtahid, and someone who had a very special connection with Imam al-Zaman, how great he was. So there we see that he doesn't come to visit him. But Mullah Naraqi, who wrote this book of ethics, says, let me go and visit Sayyid. It's okay, he didn't come to see me. I'm going to come to see him. How many people do this? Usually when someone doesn't come or is not, nice to you in a way, is not very polite to you, are you still polite to them and welcoming to them? He says, okay, Sayyid Aghas, let me go and see him. So he comes and sees him, and actually Sayyid Mahdi Bahr al-Ulum doesn't even give him attention. He comes, number one of, for example, Iran comes and he's in his meetings or his class or whatever, and in a way it's almost borderline insulting him. And people are shocked, and they're talking in the city, look, Mullah Naraqi came to Sayyid Bahr al-Ulum, he didn't give him much attention. So now people are now talking about this. And then another time he says, it's fine, let me go and visit him one more time. And then people are telling Mullah Naraqi, author of Jamu Salat, stop, what are you doing? He didn't pay attention to you. He's going to disrespect you. Why do you want to go? He goes and sees him, same thing. And then the third time he comes to see him, he says, you know what, I'm going back to Iran. This Sayyid, let me go and see Sayyid Mahdi Bahr al-Ulum Aghas, let me go and see him. There's some say Sayyid Mahdi Bahr al-Ulum comes and his feet, some say he had taken off his shoes, barefooted, and comes at the door this time of his house because he knew Mullah Naraqi is coming. He comes and hugs him and loves him, shows his love for him. And he tells him the reason why he was not paying attention to him. He says that I read this book, Jam' al-Sa'adat, magnificent book of ethics, maybe written around 100 years ago, something like that. I wanted to see, you wrote all these good things. For example, you wrote about forgiveness in ethics. I wanted to see, do you have forgiveness? You wrote about mercy. I wanted to see, do you have mercy yourself? And in a way, you can say, I shook you up as much as I could. I only could find pureness in you. I only could find ikhlas in you. So he comes and hugs him, and he was testing him. So these books that we have from ethics from our Islamic scholars, they're written from great people that actually truly practice much more than they wrote about, much more than they preached about. And this is why we're talking about being able to refine ourselves from Quran. And Quran is a miracle of Allah. It has so many verses about ethics, about ethical behavior, how human beings should live. So one of the benefits of the Holy Quran that we can have together is that when we have these discussions, is we learn Quran, at the same time we learn ethics, and hopefully it will encourage us to become better people. Let's recite Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa of ethical behavior is not having a long speech. Having a short speech is also a very ethical behavior, not bothering people. So I'm going to try to be an ethical person tonight, inshallah. Recite Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And that clock, they didn't change the time, so I think it's really late at night, so I don't go too long tonight. But remember, there's a time change. When we look at Islamic ethics, we see that we can divide it, into individual ethics and social ethics. Individual, what I need to do myself, and what society needs to do. Society is composed of individual, but at the same time, we have to look at also ethics. Another component is not only individual, it's community. Because what we do affects each other, our ethical behavior. For example, right now there's criminal actions, war crimes happening on Palestinians. And I can just talk about ethics and ethics and ethics, but not care at all for others. So therefore you see that not only is ethical behavior something individual, it should be collective. That when a person becomes a true ethical person, as a society, he causes society to grow. He causes himself to grow and care about morality. I want to tonight talk about 3 things about ethics, and we can understand them from the Quran and logic. Before we begin this topic, there are three things we need to know before ethics. Three things that you have to agree with me before we proceed on this path. One is that, is man free to change themselves or himself? Is man bound by his traits that his parents, his mother, his father gave him? Can man change? Does man have free will in order to change and to choose whatever they want to do? Unless you believe this, then there's no purpose of studying about ethics. If you think that everything I do is hereditary, or everything that I behave is just based off my environment, and that's what a lot of maybe some socialists say, or those that study society, whatever your society believes in, you are affected by it. Whatever your parents, the genes they gave you, you're in that way. Whatever good and bad that they taught you, that is what you think is good and bad. But actually, as Muslims, we believe that we have free will. We have a choice, that you can change yourself. Even if your parents were the worst of people, even if you live in the worst society, that you can change because you have free will. And God has given you a lot of power to change. We look throughout history and stories that so many people from the beginning of the spread of Islam, that their parents were actually very cruel people, but they actually became Muslims. They were, for example, worshippers of idols, but yet they became Muslims. Or the society was worshipping. And at the time that Rasulullah was alone, there are a few people that came and they followed the Prophet, even if they had to be tortured or their parents to be tortured, that we actually have a choice. And today you see many people in America are becoming Muslim, and this shows us that we have free will. You can change. You just have to be strong enough to change. That even if the society says things completely different than the religion you want, you have that ability to think, to choose, and elect your future, and to make that person that you want to choose to become that person that Allah wants you to become. So the first issue is free will. We are all free. You don't know that ability, if you have strong willpower, how much you can change. And actually, true, I agree, some of our traits are from our parents. Some of our traits are from society. For example, naturally, I might be an angry person. There are people, naturally, they're more prone to be angry. Which one is better, I ask you? A person that right now they're at the same, they're neutral now. One at the beginning never really got angry, but one would get angry, but he worked on himself so much that he controls his anger. The one that was born not being aggressive, or that person that later on he works on himself, that he controls his anger. The traditions have that obviously that person is not equal. That person that he was born with, say, this potential to become angry or this potential to sin, and he works on himself, is way better than a person that is just born, for example, in a family that they're just never get angry. I knew, some of my friends, he says that in our family, we never get angry. That's just how they are. He says once, for example, my grandfather, once they say, I don't know what happened, once he became a little bit angry in his life, just once. It just naturally, he says, we don't get angry. We're very chill all the time. We're very calm all the time. But others are Seyed, for example. And you go and visit them on Wednesday. When did they say? Wednesday nights? Is that when the Sayyids get angry? That's why we don't have programs here on Wednesday nights? Is that why? Anyways, so some are more prone for different sins. That's not important. It's like how you were born. But what is important is you have free will and you have that ability to change yourself. Some of our ulama and scholars worked 20 years on one attribute of themselves. 20 years. And today everyone works out, eats healthy, trains, but yet we neglect the soul, we neglect our ethical behavior to analyze ourselves and to change. So the first thing that you need to know is that no matter what age you are, sometimes it was, Unwan al-Basri, who was 90 years old, and he comes to Imam al-Sadiq to change, to get knowledge, to get guided. Doesn't matter if you're old, doesn't matter if you're young, doesn't matter if you're in America, if you're in another country. God has given everyone, as long as you're in this world, and as long as our life, the time that God has given us in this life has not ended, you can change and make a great impact in your life. Person comes to Imam Adi alayhi salam, cursing the dunya, saying that the dunya is somewhere bad. And Imam Adi, in a way, tells him that dunya isn't bad, that our sins are bad. Dunya, world is not bad, because the dunya, he says, is the masjid, or the place of sujood of the worshippers of God. Dunya is not bad. This is where people worship Allah. Dunya is the place where all these awliya and saints of God, this is where they get maqam and position. So if we do not want to change ourselves in this world, when else are we going to change ourselves? This is the only place, only world. How many times does God create us and give us life? Once. You have one opportunity, and again, I'm talking to myself. If you do not change yourself before Israel comes, then it's too late. Nothing will happen. Let's give a salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So everyone here, do you agree with me that the first thing that we want to prove is that you have free will, you have power to change, no matter how you are right now. Some people, they change overnight, like the story of Hur. This ittisal happened with Imam Hussein, connection with Imam Hussein, and he completely changed sides. From the army of vices and razila to the army of good ethical behavior. So it can happen. Two, the other thing that we have to talk about is that we do have a goal. We do have a purpose. We're not here just created, just to be here. Look at some of the verses of Quran mentioned. We are in a journey. فَأَمَّا الَّذِينَ شَقَوْا فَفِي النَّارِ لَهُمْ فِيهَا زَفِيرٌ وَشَهِيقٌ 11:106. And for those who are destined to be wretched, they will be in the fire. For them there is a violent exhaling and inhaling. Zafir and shahiq is inhaling, exhaling. Some of our scholars say from these verses they understand that Jahannam is alive. Jahannam is alive. And when they bring it with 1,000 angels, 1,000 chains, it tries to rebel and break the chains. And one of the other proofs is Zafir and Shahiq, meaning exhaling, inhaling is another sign. Or some of the other narrations that Jahannam talks. There in the Hadith we have that Jahannam speaks, cries. In Sirat, in the bridge that we pass, there are two cries. They say in the narration. One cry is that person that is going slowly in the bridge, because some say that everyone enters hell, but those that pass fast on the bridge, nothing happens to them. So the first cry is that person that's walking very slowly, that's stuck in a mawqif, a station on the Sirat, on the narrow bridge, and he's being burned. He's yelling, screaming, yelling for help. But then at the same time, Hadith says there's another call, another scream, and that is when the mu'min goes on the Sirat, the true mu'min, the true believer. And when he's passing by the bridge, here Jahannam cries and screams and says, hurry up and pass because you're churning me off. You're churning me off. Hurry up and pass. So there's two types of screams in the Day of Judgment. So all of this means that we have a goal. That's the second thing. And that goal is either that we will go to dhulamat and darkness of our own, vices and evil that we've done, or to an eternity of bliss and good and ni'mah and blessings. Whatever you want in the hereafter will exist. So the second part, that if you want to change yourself, that you have to truly believe, is that there is a purpose and there's another life for us that you are building, that you're responsible And you see, verses in the Quran is, ظَلَمْتُ nafsi, so this is dua you made. I have sinned against myself, that you are creating that. So we go to the third and the last thing is that man, his effort in reaching his goal is effective. This is the last. So the first, we said we have free will, you have capability. 2, there's a goal for us, there's a destiny for us, there's a destination, al-ma'ad. And the third is that therefore we build whatever is going to happen for us in the hereafter. We are responsible by our own actions for ourselves. Quran mentions very beautifully, in ahsantum li'anfusikum. If you are good for yourselves. Allah does not need our worship. Allah does not need our. If everyone right now stops praying, nothing happens to God. Nothing. But what happens to us? One of our dear brothers was mentioning this. He said that the issue of Palestine, he said that we are in need more of Palestine than Palestine needs us. Because he said, if we don't care about Palestine, then we will not be human. Then you won't have morality. Then you won't have religion. Because when you see, 4,000 kids being killed, a mu'min, a believer, someone that loves Imam Ali says something, cares about it. But if you just don't care and you go throughout your, this month, just like a normal month, then that means that Palestine, that thing that happened there, had taken away your humanity. Because you didn't have humanity in the first place. So we are in more need of Palestine than Palestine is in need of us. We need it in order, so if you say I have religion, you show that you have religion. By when there's oppression, you say this is wrong. Or for example, when, if you say I'm a good human and you care about, human rights, you say, well, what's happening is wrong. So therefore, we see that we are responsible for our own actions. I want to share and end this discussion with this hadith that we have from Imam Baqir alayhi salam. Let's give a salawat for the Imam. Musayyir ibn Abdul Aziz is a companion of Imam Baqir alayhi salam. Muyassir ibn Abdul Aziz. He was so good that Imam Baqir alayhi salam tells him that God has lengthened your life for you. You were supposed to die earlier, but because he did Silatul Rahim, he was good with his family, he took care of his family. Imam Baqir alayhi salam hadith mentions, or in history, says that Allah has prolonged his life, had given him a long life. There, Imam Baqir alayhi salam gives this interesting narration to Muyassir, this advice. He says, Ya Muyassir, Allah akhbirka bishi'atina. Should I not tell you and inform you of our Shia? And here the Imam gives 7 qualities and characteristics of the Shia. And this shows us, and I'm ending, that if we are responsible, we said 3 things. I have free will, there's a destination, and 3, I'm responsible for this destination. Then all of us have an opportunity to become, right now as we're talking, before Israel comes, we have an opportunity to become a true Shia. And let's look at these characteristics. I'm not saying I have these. I have to work on these myself. But it's important to look that this is the end. This is, the reality of Islamic ethics. That at the end you work on yourself so much that you become a true Shia. You don't become someone that just calls himself, I follow Imam Ali, I follow them, that's my madhab, I follow Rasulullah. Then no, I have, as many of the traditions we have, sifat of Shia, I have the attributes of a Shia. And that in the Day of Judgment you can actually say, they'll call you, he is a real Shia of Ali alayhi salam. Not someone that is a muhib, a lover of Imam Ali, is actually a Shia of Imam Ali. He followed him. And this is very important for us. Because, as there's a dream that some person had, they say that once he was in the grave, and it was time for the questioning of the 2 angels, very deadly, very ferocious angels coming to punish him. And at that critical time, a man comes. And this person comes right when he comes, the fire of the grave extinguishes and turns off. And he said that this is Ali ibn Abi Talib. He's coming to my grave. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. And those angels do not have authority to punish someone while Ali ibn Abi Talib is there and someone that is a follower or muhibb of Imam Ali. So he turns off the fire, everything turns off. But now it's time for Imam Ali. He says, I'm going to go. Basically in this dream, this person had said, it's time for me to go. But he says, well, wait a minute. He was first happy that he was turned off the fire, but then he says, well, why can't I come with you? So there's one thing is that you wish that the fire is turned off. Okay, but now he sees the jamal and beauty of Ali ibn Abi Talib without the barriers of this world. So now he's like, okay, let me come with you. And the Imam tells him, according to this, that you cannot come with me because you did not behave like me. You did not act like me. You cannot come with me. So in the day of judgment, in the grave, we will wish that opportunity that you were a Shia of Imam Ali because you'll be with Imam Ali. You can be a muhib and get shafa'at. And inshallah, one day Allah will forgive our sins eventually. Some, maybe they'll have to go into hellfire for a while, be punished for a while, whatever. But eventually, inshallah, there will be freedom from this. There will be intercession. But if you really want to be with Imam Ali, we have to live like Imam Ali. So this narration is important because it shows the sifat of the Shia. So the 7. The first one that Imam Bagha alayhi salam tells Muyassir is, he says, should I tell you about our Shia? He says, قُلْتُ بَلَا جُعِلْتُ فَدَائِكَ. How respectful they were. May I be sacrificed for you. Tell me, Imam Bagha. Tell me the attributes of the Shia. قَالَ إِنَّهُمْ حُصُونٌ حَسِينَ. Number 1. حُصُونٌ حَسِينَ. They are a fortified stronghold. Hisn is a fortress. Every Shia, true Shia, is a fortress. What does a fortress mean? You can't move it. You can't push it. Ayatollah Makaram Shirazi talks about this hadith here. He says maybe from this you can understand that they do not get influenced by propaganda, by false news. That today if they tell you, everything's good, this is all defense, this country is defending themselves, they have the right to self-defense, you don't get tricked by that. You don't get fooled by that. Or when they tell you, for example, this religion, it oppresses people, this religion does this, that, you're like a hasoon, you're a fortress. Nothing affects you. Propaganda does not influence you how it has been influencing so many people. 2, we see that وَصُدُورٌ أَمِينَ. Let's see if you have these attributes. 1, are you a fortress? So much so that if everybody in this world were to leave the Prophet and Imams and Quran, that you would stay on the right path. That means you're a fortress. 2, in this hadith it says, وَالصُّدُورٌ أَمِينَ, meaning that their chests are places that preserve the trust. It's like a treasure chest. It's like Fort Knox, their chest. They come and tell you a secret. You don't go and say, psst, psst, this guy just told me this. You won't believe it. But don't tell anybody. They told me not to tell anyone. You shouldn't tell anyone either. That's how it goes. Then that other person tells the other person, say, don't tell anyone. Don't tell anyone. They keep going. And the secrets, now everyone, you come to the masjid, and everyone is looking at you funny. Everyone knows. But I said, don't tell anyone. So the second trait is your chest is like a preserved trust. When someone tells you, don't tell anyone, or you see something, you know something of someone in the community. For you, you don't tell anyone. It says, something, unless really it is going to harm them, or you have to tell their parents, or something, whatever. But when they tell you secrets, you don't share the secrets. 3, here it's translated, this one, أَحْلَامٌ وَزِينَةٌ. They translated both, I looked in Farsi and English, because ahlam is usually like dreams, but also it has a meaning of intellect as well. It has a meaning of intellect. وَأَحْلَامٌ وَزِينَةٌ. The third quality of the Shia, So they're a fortified stronghold. Their chests are like a place of trust. They have a firm and dignified intelligence. They're very intelligent people. They have aql. They base their life and their actions on aql, not on emotions. Their decision making and whatever they did in their life is not emotional based. It's all logical. They always looked at the evidence. They compared the evidence and they made their decision. And that is why they're Muslim. And that is why they're followers of Imam Ali alayhi salam, because they're the most logical of creatures. Because they're well read, they're well learned, they're intellectual. 4, we have in this hadith, لَيْسُوا بِالْمَذِي الْبَذَرِ. They are not spreading rumors that are told by the people. When they hear rumors, they don't spread it. 5, they are not strict. وَلَا بِالْجُفَاتِ. They are not strict. Al-Mura'in. And they do not show off in front of people. To do riya'ah, for example. And then we have at the end, رُهْبَانٌ بِاللَّيْلِ. And they at the night time, they are rahib, they are worshippers of night. Asadun bin-nahar. And they're lions in the daytime. Nighttime they're worshipping the Shia, they worship Allah, they make dua. But at daytime they are asad, they are lions. They are courageous as how we have the lions today, defending against the oppressed. And they have these qualities of the Shia, that they are not cowards, they're not people that fear, because their Imam is Imam Ali, and they learn this courage from Imam Ali. And it's how you see today that the Shia and followers of Imam Ali are the number one defenders of the oppressed, because they are lions at the daytime. Hopefully this was a good introduction for us to ethical behavior from the Holy Quran, that we understood that we have to have free will. We understand we are responsible for our own actions and we have a destination. And therefore this is, the points or the beliefs that we need to have in order to start our ethical journey of, inshallah, reaching a very high position to become of and have the attributes of the Shia, Sifatul Shia, inshallah. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala Ahl Bayti at-Tayyibin at-Tahirin. اللهم صل على محمد